This all started in July of 2014 with some noticeable differences in Charlie. Charlie was tired all the time, but I just thought that maybe that was, part of just him working so hard. Then we went to Europe on a Porsche rally, and we had a great trip. He drove like a maniac, and it was the first rally he has ever done. I do it all the time, and he loved it. And he drove every day and blind curves, and he was great. Slept a lot, but driving 8 hours a day between the two of us, that's normal. We got back, and the next day I flew to California to go to the ashram for a week, and he drove me to the airport, and off I went. Then following Saturday, he picked me up. We got home, and he was telling me how he was really tired. He couldn't wait to get home from the boatyard, and so we just stayed home all week. Just cooked dinner every night, enjoyed each other. He would come home really early, but it was that time of the year, and I'd have to wake him for dinner, which was sort of unusual. And then I noticed that he wasn't taking a shower as soon as he got in. He fell asleep on the couch, so that sort of troubled me. And I urged him, I said, Charlie, I really think you need to go to the doctor. And he says, I think you're right. He says, as a matter of fact, a couple of my guys said, hey, boss, what's wrong? You don't seem really with it. I was in Miami for a Council 100 meeting, and I came home, and it was my youngest son's birthday, and my daughter's was the day before, so we had a big family dinner, all my children, my 3 children, and Charlie was going to fly in and meet us at the restaurant. And I mentioned to the children, I said, there's something wrong with Charlie. I don't know what it is. And of course they thought I was making stuff up. And I said, no, you just wait and you see him. Well, of course, when he came in, I think they were just taken back. And watching him gradually over a few months, didn't see it as they saw it. And of course, the next day, my oldest son said, Mom, you really got to get him to the doctor. I said, well, we're going Monday. He said, yeah, but I think you need to see a neurologist. And I said, I think you're right. So we're involved with a group of doctors, and I called one of them, Jim Goldenberg, and on Saturday, and he made arrangements for us to see him on Monday. And we were doing our blood work at 11, so that all worked out. And when we went for the blood work at 11, my doctor, who was my friend, David Dotson, I said, David, there's something wrong. And of course, Charlie was sitting right there. I said, I think he may have had the stroke. And what happened over the last 4 or 5 days was his gait was off, and he would sort of, lean on his right and sort of give way, but then he'd straighten right up. And I'd have to grab him. And so he did a couple tests, and he said, yeah, there's definitely a neurological issue. I don't know what it is. Probably may have had a little stroke. But, I said, we're going to Jim Goldenberg. He said, great. So we go there, and Jim did the same stuff, and he said, yeah. And I had also told David Sunday, I want an MRI, and I want it with and without contrast on Monday. And it had to be Monday because we were going back to Maryland. Charlie had to get back to work. So 3:30 we go in for the MRI. And, I go in to find out they had the results, or they came out, one or the other. And I said, what are they? And she goes, well, we can't give them to you. And I said, oh, yes, you can. So she said, no, we'll give them to your doctor. I said, no, unacceptable. So my friend was the chief of staff. I called Jeff Kotzen, and I said, where are you? He was in the hospital. I said, come down here now. I said, I'm here in imaging, and Charlie just had an image, and I need to know what's going on. And he came right down and went back, and as he was coming out, David Dotson called me and just said, I'm sorry. This is where I may lose it, but I'll be okay. So he says, Charlie has a brain tumor. And I said, what? And I got up off the chair and I walked away because I couldn't, he was sitting there. I couldn't sit with him. And he told me, and I was like, are you kidding me? So I composed myself and I went in, and Jeff was standing there, and he just said, I'm so sorry. And I'm hearing these words, I'm so sorry, and I didn't really realize what that meant. And I said, okay. And I sat down and I said, Charlie, we got a problem. And I said, you got a brain tumor. And we just hugged each other. And I said, we're going to fix this. Don't worry. So we, I just couldn't even function. You need to stop for a minute.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. I think I was just totally in a state of shock. But, my usual whatever I have just kicked in, and I just knew this was going to be okay. I was going to fix this like I fix everything else. So we went home, and it was a very quiet drive home. The boys wanted to come and get me, and I just said, no, we'll be there. They were at the house, and, I just couldn't figure this all out. Here we were married almost 2 years. I had lived a lifetime waiting for him. It couldn't be possible. And I started then to go into gear with, what do I need to do? Who do I need to call? And I immediately called Av Cooperman, one of my really good buddies, and he called Jeff Bruce at Columbia Presbyterian, and we flew out to New York. And by that time, Charlie was needing a walker. That's how fast this progressed. And the next morning at 9 o'clock, we went to Jeffrey Bruce's office, and he saw the films, and he said, we need to do a biopsy. We need to check you in today. And I remember seeing Jordan Grable Tuesday. That was the doctor we had to see. And Jordan Grable is probably one of the most level-headed guys. He's a neurosurgeon. And he just said to me, Elizabeth, get on the next plane out of here. Now. And I was so taken back because that's just not his nature. I've known him for a long time. And during all of this, I'm on the phone to every single person I know. Richard Lerner at Scripps, you name all my contacts. And one of them was Paul Greengard. And I called Paul, and he's at Rockefeller University, and actually a Nobel Prize winner for neurology. And he sent me over to see Jerome Posner, who was a brilliant, brilliant man. And we met with him, and he saw the results of the first MRI. After a lot of debate, because I was really wanted to do a few more tests, Dr. Bruce said to me, let's, if I get the entire neurological staff to conclude to do the biopsy, will you agree? I said yes, if it's unanimous. Well, they did, so we went ahead with the biopsy Thursday evening, and that was quite an adventure. But they came back and said it was a malignant anaplastic astrocytoma. Of course, it's inoperable. It was a very difficult situation. They were only able to get a very small amount of tissue, and that created more problems for, testing, etc. But, he said, I'll send people in from oncology and we'll start the chemo and radiation. And I said, that's not what we want to do. And he says, well, this is what you have to do. He says, well, why don't you go home for Thanksgiving or come back on Tuesday. It was Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We said, okay. So we flew back to Maryland because we have a home there. And we flew back up on Tuesday, and he got more results for us. And he wanted us to start on these treatments. And we just said, no. We discussed it, and Charlie just said no, and I said no, and we realized that there was nothing more for them to do for us, so we left. My daughter, Stephanie, and my friend Jane had been telling me about Burzynski, and I had heard about Burzynski. I knew of his name. I saw it in Suzanne Summers' books, but there was no need for me to know anything more than that. And I said, okay, let's try it. And we made application, and then we couldn't get through to the clinic. Then I find out that you can't get the anti-neoplastins IV, and I said, well, that's what you have to have. We did some talking to some different people, and they told me, well, you can apply for an emergency IND with the FDA. And I said, all right. So we went to Florida after Thanksgiving, and finally, through Jim Rappaport, I was able to hook up with Eric. And Eric really helped get us through to Dr. Burzynski, because we were having a difficult time trying to get through. So finally I was able to get through, and we spoke to them, I think it was on the 9th of December, and they said to come immediately. I spoke with Dr. Burzynski. He said come immediately. So we were going to come on the 10th, but we didn't arrive till the 11th of December. We got into the clinic the next day on the 12th, Friday, which they're not open on Fridays, but they opened for us. And we started Charlie immediately on the targeted drug therapy and the oral anti-neoplastins, what they call PB. And we were on a marathon, and then my next job was to get the FDA approval. So I met Stuart Brookman, who explained to me the process. So I said, well, you do that, and I'll call Dick Gephardt. So Dick and I and Charlie had dinner on the 16th of November, the day before Charlie was diagnosed, at the Scripps Board of Trustees dinner in Palm Beach, actually Jupiter. And he knows Charlie. And I called him and I told him what was going on, and he was just devastated. And he said, what can I do to help you? And Dick's son, who's in his 40s today, was diagnosed as a very young age, I think it was 2, with a deadly disease. And he went outside the box, and he saved his son's life, and they worked together. So he understood what I was facing. He called the FDA, and he called me back and said, this is the lady, Hardy Marchand, who you need to talk to. She's expecting your call. So I called her, and we started a dialogue. And in my lifetime, I have never, ever seen anything quite like it. They don't do this. Why are you going with Burzynski? I think you have, all this rhetoric. And I said, listen, I am not doing, she wanted me to go to referred me down to Duke. They're doing stuff down there. Sent me all these emails about all these different things that were going on. And I told her, I said, Heidi, none of that'll work for Charlie. So, we're talking about a guy who's literally dying in front of me. He's going that fast. So, well, there's nothing I can do, this and that. And I said, listen, I want to talk to whoever. And she got me on the phone with Deanne Varney. And they sort of told me what I needed to do. And I was really pretty rough with them. And I was very, very, very in their face. Finally, after a few days, they agreed to let me do the emergency IND. They would probably approve the emergency IND, single patient, if I got another doctor and did it outside the clinic. And I said, what are you, and really, and they also wanted me to do radiation and chemo at the same time. I said, we're not doing that. I said, we're not doing either of those things. And I think in a courtroom, you are going to be at risk. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you think that my husband dies and you don't lose your job, I am going after it. I said, every single one of you. And I said, and don't think I don't know everyone there is to know. I said, I am your worst nightmare. When I was talking with the FDA and they were really being their obnoxious self, I said, so it's okay that you approve it for the Saudi king's nephew that got approval in 24 hours for anti-neoplastins, who's still alive. And that was done, I think, in 24 hours. And then you got a CIA agent on anti-neoplastins, and that was done in a few hours. So you randomly choose who lives or dies? Is that what you do? I don't know how you, and I literally said, how do you live with yourself? How do you play God and act like you can do this? Well, I proceeded then to call everyone I knew, from George Bush, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Mitch McConnell, connection to Joe Biden. It was just, I mean, I could go on and on and on, the people I contacted that actually made the phone calls, who got back to me and said, Tommy Thompson, who said, I've never seen anything like this. These people are crazy. So I called Rick Scott, and he said, so, I mean, it was like everyone. It was like, and I was under such enormous stress trying to get this accomplished. And finally they said, well, you just have to find a doctor. So my sister-in-law kept calling me, what can I do? What can I do? And I finally said, Lisa, if you want to do something, find a doctor. I said, I don't care if it's a quack. I said, go on Google and look for bad doctor in Texas. Because if it's any other doctor, they're not doing it. Because they get threatened by the hospitals to lose privileges if they go. Because went to 3 different doctors who said, oh, sure, we'll help you. As soon as they, a couple days later or within the same day, said, oh, no, we can't do it. We'll lose our privileges. Dr. Emily Baker, I mean, she wasted 4 days of my life. Then she sends me a bill. And I'm like, are you kidding me, lady? Anyway, so, I mean, it was just consistently over and over, all these people. And then I'm sort of like up against a wall, and I'm thinking, what can I do? Paul Schimmel calls me, he's a script scientist, and he said, I have a friend who I've told about your cause, and I want you to call him Peter Barton Hutt. Peter Barton, and I looked him up, and Peter Barton Hutt was the former chief counsel of the FDA. He is also the professor of FDA law at Harvard currently. So we spoke, and I told him what was going on, and he said his brother died of a glioblastoma, and he felt for me, and he told me to stay on my course. And he helped me, and he advised me, and he called me on a regular basis and encouraged me constantly. And I would tell the people at the FDA, I said, listen, Peter Barton Hutt told me that if you agree to this, then you're going to do it. So I'll find a doctor. So we find a doctor, Dr. Joe Verone, who was like an angel. And he's brilliant. I mean, the guy is unbelievably brilliant. He's not a quack, because that's where I thought the only way I would go. He is the most compassionate man I've ever met. And we met with him, brought Charlie over there, and he said, I'll do it. And between, I think it was the 20th, 21st of December, just before the Christmas holidays, he worked with Stuart Brookman, and they prepared the IND. The FDA backed away from it. They said no, and we went back at them. I mean, it was like I went up one side of them and down the other. I was screaming at him. I called Peter. He said, you give them, and he said, call the press. My girlfriend was married to Geraldo. I called Cece. And, I threatened them with everything I had. They backed down. And finally, on December 24th, well, let me back up. Okay, because I left out a huge piece of this. The Texas Medical Board gets involved. They were going to arrest everyone if we did the treatment. So I'm thinking, Texas Medical Board. Okay. Now what do I do? So I called Rick Scott, governor of Florida. Great guy, a friend. And I explained the situation, and I said, I don't know Rick Perry. I know who he is, but I've never had an opportunity to meet him. He says, I'll call him right now. My phone rang, and it was Rick Perry within 5 minutes. And I explained everything to him. And he says, listen, Texas Medical Board, he said, I appointed them, but they're a breed of their own. He says, but I'll do everything I can. And here's my chief of staff, and she'll do everything. Well, for like a 3 or 4 day period, or maybe a week, I was in constant contact with Rick Perry's office, and they were turning the world upside down for me. They don't even know me. They don't know Charlie. And I can't tell you how many times the Governor Perry called me and said, how's it going? Encouraging me. Peter Barton Hutt calling me, encouraging me. So ultimately, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, we got our first infusion of A&P. And it was amazing. Now, when we arrived here on December 11th, my son, my youngest son, Joey, and his wife and 18-month-old daughter came with me. And today is January 13th. Joey's still here. His wife, Jamie, and their daughter, Elizabeth, who was named after me, left yesterday. They have been here this entire time with me. Joey's older brother, Paul, came in just before Christmas with his wife and 3 daughters. And we were at the Verone Clinic getting this anti-neoplastins, the 2 boys, and Charlie and I. And it was not the way we normally spend Christmas Eve, but it was probably the best Christmas Eve we ever had. And the process has just been beyond unbelievable. We've had some good days. We've had some bad days. From the inception of the AMP into Charlie, I literally saw changes. I saw him lift his right hand to his nose, which he wasn't doing. I watched him lift his right leg up, doing exercise. I saw him point on a regular basis. We are now here a little over 30 days. We're heading home tomorrow. We'll do our IV at home. But there's another problem now. Dr. Burzynski is facing, I think, a 200-count indictment from the Texas Medical Board, which is just bizarre. Charlie needs his treatments. And they could possibly take that away from us. And I'm doing everything I possibly can to make that not happen. One of the things that the FDA did, this is how bad they are. They said, okay, we're going to let you do the treatment, but Dr. Burzynski can't charge you. So he's supposed to make these things and give them to me. I said, well, that's unacceptable to me. So I can make donations. I can do anything I want. And they can't tell me what to do. But I thought, well, maybe the best thing to do is get him some counsel to come in to really help Rick Jaffe, who's done a tremendous job, But this is like life or death at this point for, I think, Dr. Burzynski. So we had a pretty good session yesterday, and one of the things that we came up with was, let's hit the Texas Medical Board at all fronts. Whether it's legislatively, changing legislation, which happens all the time, which I've done, or just politically. So I said, well, I'll call the governor. I said, I'll ask him to do a pardon. Why not? Why shouldn't he? So I walked out of the room. Ted Babbitt, my attorney that flew in, walked with me. I called the governor, got his voicemail, left a message. Within 2 minutes, the phone rang. It was the governor, Governor Perry, and I brought him up to speed. And I said, so everything's going great. Charlie's really progressing. I got the MRI, the third MRI, and you could actually see the composition of the tumor change to over half of it, like the normal, like the rest of the brain, and just a little bit of area that's still lit up. So this is like 13 days of treatment. And I said, Governor, I need you to do a dismissal of these charges because they're hogwash. They're stupid. They're nonsense. They're ridiculous. I went through them. Counsel went through them. Some very bright people. I said, listen, he said, well, I don't know if it would work. And I said, I don't care if it does work. What if you just do it and they're on the defense and they have to chase us and they have to prove that you're wrong? I said, do what Jeb Bush did with Terry Schiavo. He just issued the order. And you know what? They got some time. We need time. Charlie and a couple other 100 people and future people need time. If he doesn't stay on this treatment, Charlie's going to die. There's no question. No doubt. And he says, it makes sense to me. He said, let me talk to my lawyers. So today I sent him the dismissal motion, and hopefully he signs it. And that would be great, because then we can concentrate on other things.